Wealth is a mindset. If it was easy, everyone would be a billionaire. They aren't. In this house, we do the work and are wildly resourced as a result. Welcome to House of Wealth. It's time to actualize your destiny.
I'm gonna live in freedom. I'm gonna live my destiny. I'm gonna live my freedom. I'm gonna live, the time is right now.
Hey, welcome to a new episode of House of Wealth. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to everyone who reached out to me about the last episode. It has been really well received, and I'm a bit surprised, honestly. I was really unsure how my audience was going to receive it, how they were going to take the episode. And so again, thanks so much to all of the listeners that have reached out either through email or personal message. It really means a lot. And yeah, I'm excited to, keep sharing the journey. And, I just have to say that I am a bit blown away at how many people are going through or experiencing something similar right now. And, I think that there's this piece of us that we always feel like we're going through something alone, and that nobody can understand what we're experiencing or the journey that we're on or the road that we're on. And it's just kind of ridiculous, right? Because there's 8 billion people on this planet. So surely if we're experiencing something, hundreds of thousands of other people are experiencing something similar, right? So anyway, it gave me a little bit of a chuckle that I have felt so alone in my journey. And I have felt like, no one will possibly understand this. Nobody, is going through this same thing. And, it's just another example of how we make ourselves so self-important, or we think that we're so unique or so special. Which I guess kind of brings me to one of the things that I wanted to talk about. So I'm naming this episode Drinking from the Firehose of Faith. And I really feel like, especially the last several months, that has been my experience. I feel overwhelmed by the amount of information that's coming my way, by the amount of people I'm being introduced to or who are coming across my path that are in a similar situation or walking a similar path as me, and just all the incredible information and knowledge and wisdom that's opening up to me through all of the studies and all of the research that I'm doing. If you've been following me for a while, I want to know all the things about all the things. I'm a 5-1 projector in human design, and my investigative line is strong. I love knowing things. I love researching things. I love learning things. And I've always been that way. And I think I probably always will be that way. And this journey into exploring Christianity and a connection with God and Jesus Christ has been no different. I have been studying all the things that I can get my hands on. And I think I mentioned in the last episode, I'm pretty sure that I did, that one of the things that I've been studying is the intersection of Christianity and astrology. And it's something that I'm still studying and very, very interested in and learning a lot about, and actually being quite blown away at how many different times throughout history these things have intersected, and the repression of astrology at certain times and the demonization of astrology by the church at certain times. So I'm still deep in that discovery. And at some point, once I feel like I have a handle on it, I'll definitely do an episode on it. I'm really fascinated by this information. And as a listener, if you've watched a podcast or you've seen a YouTube video or something that you think that I would find fascinating, or come across a book, definitely email me at podcast@theleahsteele.com. Open to receiving any and all resources on that topic. Because again, I find it fascinating, and I've been totally geeking out on it. But one of the things that I wanted to chat about was the reality of my new age spirituality journey and how different that has been and was from this journey that I've been taking, which, I can't really explain it in any other way than to say it just feels like a coming home to God or a calling home to God. And in that coming home to God and calling home to God has been a discovery of Jesus Christ that really hasn't ever been a part of my reality when it came to a higher power or creator. I've always been really comfortable in my personal relationship with God, even though it was not that developed. But Jesus Christ was always sort of this enigma to me. And, something that growing up in Salt Lake City, Utah, with a huge focus on the Mormon religion, the Latter-day Saints, and their interpretation of the relationship between God and Jesus was something I think that, quite honestly, put me off of Jesus. And just because there was a lot of programming and conditioning around that from the counterculture perspective, which I was absolutely a part of. And when I say counterculture, I mean the culture opposite from the culture of Mormonism that existed and exists inside Salt Lake City, Utah. And I don't say this to say that, to say anything negative about Mormonism, just that was not the environment that I grew up in. And I grew up with a lot of people who were quite traumatized around their experience in the LDS church and who had rejected the LDS church and sort of went out on their own path that was separate from the LDS church. Like most religion, I think, that people have had negative experiences. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that religion is definitely a man-made construct, and in many and most cases is used to control and manipulate people into doing the bidding or will of a group of human beings who desire to be in power. And I want to just share, I think, on this podcast also that, what I'm journeying right now and what I'm experiencing is not in any way religious in any sense of the word. I'm not going to church. I'm not following a specific religious dogma. I am just in a deep exploration of my personal relationship to God and Jesus Christ. So that was a bit of a digression, but it felt like that was important. But what I do want to talk about is the reality of my new age spirituality journey versus what I'm experiencing right now, which I think is more of a surrendering or, as I mentioned, a calling home to God. The difference has been that when I was in that, what I used to refer to as a spiritual reawakening inside New Age philosophies and spirituality, there was never a sense of peace. There was never a sense of contentment. There was never a sense of feeling full with the spirit or feeling held or feeling like, oh, God's got me or someone's got me. And what that ended up leading to was so much seeking. And I was always looking for the next spiritual fix or the next spiritual hit. I was always looking for the next healer, the next shaman, the next plant medicine ceremony, the next thing that was going to fill that space inside me or make me feel healed or make me feel fixed or make me feel peaceful or happy or content. And it never came. And, I entered into that trap, which I really think is the trap of New Age spirituality, of a belief that life is this continual death and rebirth process, that I was just meant to be the phoenix continually having to rise from the ashes, or even, my program Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail, going through this continual cycle of death, rebirth, regeneration, death, again and again and again. And it's really fascinating because even in the last round of Ouroboros, which is one of my wealth repatterning programs that I've run over the years, the last round, I actually changed the imagery in the logo to be different than the snake eating its tail in that Ouroboros pattern. I actually broke the snake free and had the snake going off the path, because even then I could sense that there was something wrong in that belief of this is the continual cycle that we're meant to be in as human beings on this planet. That life somehow is supposed to be hard, and that we're always supposed to be seeking healing, and that we're always broken, and that we're always needing fixing of some kind. And as a result of that, especially in New Age spirituality, like we're always seeking out the next guru, we're always seeking out the next expert. And it's also self-focused. It's I'm broken. It's I need to heal me. I need to do this. I, need to create my reality. I need to manifest this thing into my life that I desire. And I think that, when I got to that falling apart place, and that, the place of the most deconstruction that I had experienced, and called on God and, was on my knees praying, like, help me, show me the way, show me the path. Everything changed that day. And it was about a year ago, maybe in a couple of weeks, it'll be about a year, or it'll be a year and a couple of weeks. From that point on, from that moment, even though it was some of the hardest months of my life, from the moment that I asked for the help, that I asked for God to come into my heart, that I asked for God to come into my life and help me navigate it and get back on the path that God wanted me to be on, I've been happy. I've been content. And my seeking has not been frantic. My seeking has not been an attempt to fill a hole. I feel happy. I feel content. I feel peaceful, more peaceful than I think I've ever felt in my entire life. And my seeking is for wisdom, education, and understanding, not because I feel like I need to fix something in me that's broken. And it's such an incredible place to be. And I, being somebody that really loves helping people and wants to see people thrive, I can't help but want this feeling for everyone in my community and all the people around me, especially those that I know that are stuck in that kind of perpetual hamster wheel of seeking the next healer, the next shaman, the next thing that's going to fix them, the next thing that's going to actually bring abundance into their life or prosperity into their life. So that was one thing that I wanted to share. And, it's just like the more I lean in to that feeling and that like just sense of being, which is what I was always seeking. I was like, I just want to be. I want a sense of being and not feel like I have to do, not feel like I have to hustle, not feel like I have to chase. And I could never find that. And this has been so refreshing to actually be in a place where I'm like, I'm just happy. I'm just content. And I'm researching and I'm reading and I'm learning, not because I need to fill a hole, but just because I want to understand and I want to expand my knowing and my understanding of the journey and the path that I'm on right now. And I do just want to name, something because, definitely I know that there are some people that are listening to this or that are, reading some of my posts or, listening to some of my content and just being like, what, has she completely lost the plot? And I want you to know, like, I question myself all the time. I question myself and I'm like, okay, am I just now following the next, like I've already done all of the plant medicine and all of the new age stuff. And now I'm just moving on to the next thing, is following God foolish? Am I simply chasing the next spiritual fix in, this thing that I perceive to be this calling home to God? Am I, is this just the next cycle of my seeking healing journey? And I guess, the only thing that I can say to that, and whenever those doubts arise in me or those questions come up in me, I just go back to, how do I feel? How do I feel when I feel I'm in the presence of God? How do I feel when I'm praying every night before bed? How do I feel when I'm reading my Bible? How do I feel when I'm, reading all of these different books that I'm reading and really exploring my personal relationship with God? And I feel amazing. And I've never felt that way before. And so I have to just, again, be like, all right, well, this is what faith is. It's not faith if there's not doubts. It's not faith if we don't have questions. And that in and of itself is the beauty of surrendering my knowing over to the knowing of God and just trusting that. And so, but don't think that I don't question it too. Don't think that I don't go, well, what is this? And that is why I research. And that is why I'm spending so much time educating myself on all of this. But I do think it just always comes back to feeling and faith and results. And the results in my life right now are that my life is becoming day by day everything that I've always wanted it to be. And that is happening because of my connection with God. And that I cannot deny. So that's sort of where I'm coming from on that. Something else that came up the other day, and I can't remember where I heard this, but I was watching a podcast or watching a YouTube video or something. And then I have had the conversation a couple of times with a couple of friends who are on a similar path to me when it comes to all of this. But we were talking about there's a lot of evidence that we're potentially living in a simulation. A lot of people are making a lot of good arguments about the fact that we might be in a simulation. And so, the question came up of okay, well, if you are in a simulation, then what's the point of following God? And is that even real or is that true? And I was thinking about that and I was like, well, look, if this is just a simulation and we're playing the game, I'm happier playing the God game than I've been playing any other version of the game that I've played, including, the witchcraft game, including the divination game, including the New Age spirituality game. All of those games left me feeling miserable and unfulfilled. And the God game is leaving me feeling happy and blissful and joyful and optimistic and positive. And I'm not riddled with anxiety and depression and pain in my body. So I'm like, if this is a simulation, I'm definitely choosing the God version of the simulation game. So those are just a couple of thoughts. And it's just continuing to be this leaning into faith. And it does feel overwhelming at times. And it does feel like I'm drinking from the fire hose of faith, because it's I turned the spigot on and I tried to turn it on to a drip. And it literally is and it's like the fire hose from the fire truck of information coming at me. And yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for it all. And it's been a fascinating journey. It really has, especially with how I was raised and how I was brought up, and, really feeling like I wasn't somebody who was raised in a church. I mentioned on the last episode that I did spend summers with my grandparents. And, when we visit my grandparents, we did go to church and I did summer Bible study and things like that. But yeah, we weren't a family that read the Bible. And so it was and is unusual that this would be the calling that I would have. And I guess the interesting thing for me also is that, now as I'm kind of going back and recapitulating my whole New Age spirituality journey, I can see the places all along that journey that Jesus was trying to reach out to me, that Jesus was trying to connect to me, that I was being called home to God, but I interpreted that as something else. And I do also just want to say that I'm incredibly grateful for every step that I've taken along the way. Because if it wasn't for experiencing all the things that I experienced, I wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't be in a place of being able to receive this calling and live this version of my life. So I don't regret. And I guess there's that old adage of like, you didn't know what you didn't know. And I definitely feel that way. I can look back at that version of me all along the way who thought that she was, being led by spirit, who thought that she was, connecting to the divine, who thought that the practices and the rituals and the things that she was doing were correct. I can look back at all of that and have a lot of compassion for someone who didn't know what she didn't know. And I'm also sitting here in this iteration of me saying, in a year or 2 years from now, I might be like, oh my gosh, you had no idea. She had no idea what she was talking about. But I'm here to share the journey. And, it's that thing of results don't lie. And yeah, I'm just so incredibly happy and content and thankful for all of the unanswered prayers as well. I think back to a year ago where I was, and in my very new age spirituality way of being, trying to control and manipulate things to work out in my favor, as I felt like everything was falling apart, as I was grasping and trying to fix things and trying to, spending hours and hours and hours and hours trying to figure out how to make things work. And then also having this awareness that the day that I finally said, I can't do this, and my best thinking has gotten me into this situation, and falling down on my knees and literally telling God that I would surrender every single thing in my life, including my children, if it was in their highest and best good. Like, that is how dark of a place I was in. From that moment, the prayers were, God, you show me the path. You show me the way. Not, God, create this path that I desire for myself. Not, God, take me to this place that I desire to go. And that really is what changed everything. And so I'm incredibly grateful that God didn't answer some of the prayers that I was praying 13 months ago, 14 months ago, because my life would look entirely different and it would not be happy. I know that. I would still be surrounded by people that didn't have my highest and best interest at heart, by, just a life that was miserable to live, and a body that was sick and broken, and a mental state that was disintegrating by the day and broken. So I'm so thankful for the unanswered prayers and the major, major rerouting that had to happen. And I'm incredibly grateful to be drinking from the Firehose of Faith. And so I guess, this is just a little addendum or an add-on to the episode from last week to let you know more about where I am and how this journey is unveiling. And I guess I would just say to you, if you are in an exploration of your faith, or you are in a reevaluation of what is or isn't working for you, just remember that results don't lie. And that if you are trying to fill a hole that feels unfillable, that's probably a pretty good sign that you're not on the right path. And I tried to fill that hole for so many years. I know what it feels like. And it's like, it doesn't matter how much coal goes into that furnace, and it doesn't matter how much money's in the bank account, and it doesn't matter how successful you are, and it doesn't matter, how many people know you and how many followers you have on Instagram. Like I literally achieved all the things that I wanted to achieve. I made the millions. I had the followers. I had the community. I had the fans. I had the status. I had the beach house. I had all the things and I was still miserable. And now it's so funny because I look at the things and I don't even care about them. Like none of those things are even things that are important to me right now. And it's beautiful to see as soon as I surrendered that need or that desire to fill that hole, and I stopped needing to be the person driving the ship and in charge of the direction and the path, and I turned that over to God, how much God has stepped in and provided for all of the things that I thought I needed before. So that's the episode for the day. Have an amazing rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world as you are listening to this episode.